presented to the board for first reading, as well as checking with the Sheriff's Department, Fire and Rescue. So to our knowledge, there are no discrepancies between our ordinance and any state regulations.
So if I were, if I lived next to the fair and I didn't agree with the fair coming in, how much more lenient are we now with fireworks versus where we were based on our, and keep in mind that you are now moving closer to state regulations, so.
I think under this ordinance, you are recognizing that there are discrepancies between the board's own sets of regulations. That first step was taken when I think, as Ms. Lambert alluded to, originally fireworks were not allowed.
Right.
A subsequent amendment to the special exception allowed the display of fireworks. That potential discrepancy, I think, became more apparent at that time once the fireworks displays were allowed as part of the use permit, which then put potentially those fireworks displays in conflict with our noise ordinance.
Right. So you can appreciate the fact that the door was once closed, then it was open a little, and now it's open completely.
Mr. Underwood,
you appreciate that, right?
I remember Ms. Lambert coming into my office and talking about the zoning down in that area.
Absolutely.
So yes, sir, I can appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. I have no more questions, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Akers.
No, I have no questions.
Taylor?
Just a couple. Prior to the fire ordinance that we have adopted, there was no limit to fireworks display in particular areas. And the ordinance that we enacted limit them to 4 times a year. Is that right?
Yes, sir. There were no limitations, to my knowledge, specified in the previous fireworks ordinance. And as part of your deliberations, when you amended the fireworks ordinance, you imposed a specific limit of 4 times a year. Yes, sir.
And I think if I could speak for the board, I think what we were trying to do at that time was to allow fireworks in certain situations, in certain controlled situations. Now, if we now say that we're going to enforce the noise ordinance, what does that do to the special permit?
I think that was the conflict, Mr. Taylor. On the one hand, you have a department under the auspices of the board that is issuing permits for the display of fireworks. They have the criteria they go by to issue those permits. Once that permit is issued and the permit holder starts setting off those fireworks, if those fireworks exceed the decibel level, and I understand Ms. Best's statement, I think she's correct in that all the research that I've seen, the lowest decibel reading that I could find related to setting off these aerial fireworks was about 140 decibels. So they are louder than what the current noise ordinance would allow. So once that permit is issued and the fireworks start to be displayed, you have that discrepancy between the 2 ordinances.
So literally, there would be no point in issuing the permit if we're not going to at least make it such that we're not going to enforce that, not all the time, just for these 2 or 3 or 4 times a year when we are allowing this to take place.
Yes, sir. The only other option, and the noise ordinance, I don't believe, is a standard under which the fire chief, it's not an issue that he looks at in terms of the issuance of a fireworks permit. So to ask him to not issue a permit because it may violate the noise ordinance is not an item that the fire chief can look at.
And that's basically what I was asking.
You're only, if you do nothing with the noise ordinance in terms of that conflict, then the option would appear to be to go back to the fireworks ordinance to see if you want to revisit that issue.
And basically what we were doing was trying to comply with the state when we redid this ordinance in the first place. The fireworks.
That was one of the issues that was raised, because there was language in our fireworks ordinance that, from my understanding, was inconsistent with some of the state regulations. But the limit itself, I don't think was that issue.
That's all I have.
Okay, and Mr. Fincham, just one question related to Ms. Lambert. She said there was basically no limits now. With respect to fireworks, which is why we're talking about the noise ordinance, there are limitations, right? There's still the 4 times a year limitation.
There's still a 4 times a year limitation. So that would be the worst case scenario, 4 times a year by this ordinance. I actually think there may be a restriction in the use permit that is less than 4. I don't recall off the top of my head. But at a maximum, it would be 4 times a year. So you're correct in that there is a limitation by this ordinance of no more than 4 times a year.
Okay, but that, of course, Ms. Lambert is in Reedy Church, and she can see the State Fair from her house and see King's Dominion from her house. But King's Dominion, not being in Caroline, doesn't have that 4 per year. I think when the summer comes, they do fireworks every Friday and Saturday or something like that, right?
Yes, sir. I'm not aware of Hanover's limitations.
I mean, the point was just there are more than 4 just on the other side of the county line that we have no control over, which, you know, may or may not be good. Okay. All right. Right back. I understand. Were there any more questions? He's not even 50
Mr.
yet.
Fincham, you talked about the 140 decimal fireworks. At what point is that 140 decimal?
In looking at the literature, obviously where you discharge the fireworks, it's going to be loud there. Where the firework explodes, you'll have a decibel reading there. From my reading, those tend to be the highest decibel readings where you set off the fireworks and where the fireworks actually explode. In theory, there's some reduction in the noise level over distance. We've looked at that as part of the festival permit, where festival stages are located and reductions in sounds over distance. But yes, aerial displays of fireworks are noisy.
But I think it kind of brings up a good point in that, and I don't know, but I'm a few miles from AP Hill, and on a good Sunday morning, I can hear, small arms fire, and I can hear machine guns and all of that. It sounds like dull thuds. I know what it is just from association, and I'm sure if I was standing next to whoever had that weapon, it would be a lot louder. So the 140 decibels is at impact point and not ground level at 100 feet or so? Do we know?
I can't give you a specific answer, Mr. Thomas. We did look into the whole issue of noise and fireworks. I could not find anything that spoke to a specific reduction in the decibel readings, either from the point of discharge or the point of detonation, related to the location of
sound waves over
correct
feet,
yes,
or whatever. And I guess there's some scientist who has that kind of information. But all right.
And I understand the concern about noise. I mean, I heard the audio of the fireworks display that was presented to the Board of Zoning Appeals. I think this board has also heard one. It is unquestionably loud.
Okay. All right, how does the board wish to, any more questions, I guess I should ask? Or are we done with questions? How does the board wish to dispose of this matter, to amend the... Yes, you are, ma'am.
I'm sorry, but it's not just the fireworks.
Okay.
It's the noise ordinance.
Ms. Lambert? Ms. Lambert? And what we are doing, because we want to, I mean, we're trying to work out with all sides, just to make sure you understand. We have before us modifications to the noise ordinance only. And that is what we're looking at, because the noise ordinance was inconsistent with festivals. So we're just looking at the noise ordinance. And part of what we were trying to make sure we were doing is mix a little bit, but the festivals and fireworks permits, we were looking at the reduction in numbers to make sure they were small. We're trying to help everybody and make sure it works for everybody. So, were there any more questions? How does the board wish to dispose of this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion that we accept the amended noise ordinance, Chapter 68, noise ordinance for the county code.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Black, seconded by Mr. Seeley to amend the noise ordinance. Is there discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Mr. Black, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley.
Aye.
Mr. Underwood.
Nay.
Mr. Akers.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries 5-1. Next agenda item is supposed to be, they're finished? Okay. Let me do one more and then we'll go to that. I promised the sheriff, since I was late, that I would do number 5 at no earlier than 8:30. So no earlier than 8:30, I'm still true to my word. Mr. James, would you like to come forward and let us take care of agenda item number 9, which is the change order for Dawn Wastewater Project?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's good to be back with you again. This should be the last change order that we asked to have you adopt as part of the contract for finishing Phase 2 of the Dawn wastewater system. You have the staff report. You authorized the original contract to be signed back in January. That amount, which included where we had adjusted some costs downward, where we had identified some additional outside funding, some fundraising efforts to the tune of about $24,000 to help close the gap. You signed a contract that included 24 of the 30 homes. It was as far as we could go at that point. You see from the staff report, we've identified that to get the 6 remaining houses, contractors offered to do that for $70,200. It's a final change order. Excuse me. We've have, in the meantime, the project has gone smoothly with this general contractor. We have seen savings where we have not had to use the contingency line item to the degree we thought we might have to. We have not had to use funds for easement acquisition to the degree that we thought we'd have to. We have some additional outside funding sources that we are working with now. We have tentative commitments, and we also have 2 others that we are working with that I'm really not able to talk about at this point, but we feel favorable about. We had a small amount of unobligated funds that is available, and then the final piece is to utilize about $18,000 from the housing fund, and the housing fund was created in the original housing grant for the Dawn project. Those folks low-income individuals who had their houses repaired or reconstructed with indoor plumbing, were required to pay a mortgage payment, and that money is required by the state to go into this separate housing fund and can be used only for the purposes of bringing other homes up to minimum housing standards, and to utilize some of these funds to bring, of those 6 remaining homes that we will be adding, 5 of them are low moderate income houses. So to use some of these funds to help with the cost of connecting them to sewer and getting them off of failing septic systems qualifies. With that, we're happy to say that we believe we put together a package that met your requirements, no additional county general funds to the project, and get all 30 homes connected. This change order will meet the requirements that this board put upon the project team. And we say that and go, whew, we made it. Mr. Chairman, that's my report. Hope you'll act favorably.
Thank you, James, and board members in their packet have the source of the $70,000. Questions for Mr. James?
Yeah, just give Mr. James that, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I just got a couple questions. The $15,000 says that are tentative.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Tentative $15,000. If that doesn't fall through, you're saying in that paragraph that if that doesn't come about, that you have the money to cover that. Is that what we're saying?
The worst case scenario would be that we don't get any more outside funds. Now, and there are other outside funds we're working to try to secure, but we just don't know enough at this point that I can stand here and name names. We will be filing applications later this week with 2 other private foundations. If we don't get any of those, then there is money within that housing fund that was created for this purpose that can be used, and we still would not even use half of what's in that fund.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
That was my same question, Mr. Chairman, was what if the funds didn't come through?
He's got a plan B. Mr. Underwood?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Baker? Nope. Taylor? No. Mr. Underwood?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we approve the change order number 3 for the Phase 2 Dawn wastewater project.
Second. Motion made by Mr. Underwood, seconded by Mr. Akers to approve change order number 3 for Phase 2 Dawn wastewater system. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. James, for all your work.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood, for keeping his feet to the fire.
Great job.
Thank you.
All right. Agenda item number 5. I'm going to give the sheriff a chance to get his folks together, and I'm going to give Mr. Underwood a chance to eat dinner since I pulled him at 2 different meetings. So 10 minutes, and we are going to come back. I have 8:37, 10 earth minutes. Okay? We have an issue with supervisor minutes, but 10 earth minutes. We'll be back in 10 minutes, 8:40, which is continued discussion of options to meet the FCC narrowband mandate for the public radio system. I am sure there are still some comments, but I want to make one thing clear and make sure we all understood the process. The county put out an RFP for a county-owned new narrowband radio system. Motorola was the vendor selected for that project. We received the contract from Motorola March-ish timeframe, and we have been negotiating with Motorola and reviewing the contract since then. We do, as a county government, have the opportunity to listen to anything the neighboring counties have to say. And our consultant's not here, but the consultant made a recommendation based on where we were in December timeframe. So there had been some new developments. We got calls. We were asked to visit one of our localities to talk about their project. But we still have been negotiating with Motorola. We have never stopped negotiating with Motorola. Having said that, we are now at the point of more discussion. If there is more discussion to be had, anyone has a comment they would like to make? The reality is, for all the public safety folks, Sheriff's Office, deputies, fire and rescue, Mr. Satterwhite and the school bus folks, and even there are even some radios for public works. What we would like to do is buy the best technical system we can afford to buy to make sure that you're safe and you can do your jobs, which is basically protecting the rest of the county. I believe that's where we are at this point. That's the philosophy we've had, doing the best we can with what we have. Any comments, discussion anyone would like to make? Mr. Black?
Mr. Cully, I think I asked you this during the break. Can you send to me and send out an email again on the breakdown of, you know, like how much is going to the schools, how much is going to the sheriff's department, how much is going to fire and rescue? All right, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
You want that now? I have it. I mean, if you want it now, I'll give it to you as we go around. That was the only question?
Yeah, that was the only question I had.
Sealy?
Mr. Chairman, for all the folks that have come to speak to us, I think the emphasis should have been on a radio system that met the needs, not the vendor name. So let me just remind everybody so that there's no confusion later about what the cost of this system is. Because from year 4 to year 15, it's $1 million a year for the radio system. And that's just the radio system. That's not any additional things that the county needs. And I think sometimes people get focused on what they're getting instead of what it's really going to cost. Additionally, the $6.2 million doesn't account for all of the costs that actually has to take place to get this radio system up and running. There is the potential of additional costs. Other localities have had anywhere from 15 to 30% additional cost to the radio system being put in. So the $6.2 million is not the end of the discussion, and that amortized cost is not just $6.2 million. So in the future, when people say, why are our taxes going up? What are we paying for? I want everybody to realize what else actually had to be accounted for when we do the system. Because too frequently, the faces that are here tonight aren't here during budget time. They come when the budget's done, and the folks that come to complain that their taxes are too high, those folks aren't here tonight, but they'll be here during budget time. There is additional cost in this, and I don't know how we're going to pay for that when that shows up, and I want everybody to be aware of that. So when it comes, you're not like, well, you told it was just, the advertised cost was $6.2 million. That is not the bottom line, and that is not the final cost. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Underwood?
I do have a couple of comments, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to the citizens that served on the committee. I do want to thank members of this board for being very diligent in the research. I think we had some very good discussions about what's out there. For me, I wanted to explore all of the options. I think as a person that you put in charge of tax dollars, I had to look at all of the options. From the worst option, although it would work, to the absolute best option. Now, I was thinking about a law case I read where a lady sued the school system for special education services for her son. And I'm reminded that the Supreme Court judge said, the school doesn't have to give you a Cadillac. They have to give you transportation. So we scream for a Cadillac, but sometimes we don't want to pay for the Cadillac when it gets into your yard, or you get down the road 6 months and you find out that there are additional costs. So I can assure you that every option has been kicked around the table, and for that I'm thankful. again, I have the same sentiment as Mr. Seeley, and that is that we have to make sure that we give you the equipment, necessary tools to do your job. And I think that's what the conclusion this board is going to come to. But I can tell you that we have explored all options, and we certainly have had some very heated discussion, and I think it was some very healthy discussion. That's my only comment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, there's no question in my mind that each board member, the rabbit they chased down a particular avenue, you felt confident in what you were doing. You really did. But I also want to address what has been said about the eventual cost of the Motorola system, if that is what this board goes with. I certainly have to depend, and I believe this board has to depend a great deal on staff. Mr. Pelley, we hired him. We had confidence in him and the information he provided to the board. Now, he's given us a report here that says, even with, if we join Spotsylvania system, the Caroline County, going with the Motorola system, over a 15-year period, you would save $1,510,000. And that is for 2 sites in Caroline County. That is certainly a minimum that we could say, have in Caroline County. Based on the maps that have been provided by the consultants, you may have to have 5 additional sites in Caroline County. And as we look at the additional sites, if we had to go with 3 sites, you would save $3,358,000 over a 15-year period. If we had to put 4 sites in, it would be $5,207,000, and if we had to put 5 sites in, it would be $7,056,000. Even though, Mr. Seeley, you're absolutely correct, it's not a inexpensive process, but going other routes is going to cost you more money in a 15-year period. I can tell you, I've not had a commitment to Motorola other than I wanted what was the best system we could find in Caroline County, could afford in Caroline County, for the people, as well as the people that use the system, and as well as the residents and citizens of this county. That's been my whole point, is the fact that sometimes you're right, Mr. Underwood, you can't afford the Cadillac, but you do everything you can to give them, give the people the best that you can possibly give them. And that's the reason I supported Motorola from the beginning, is the fact that it was a recommendation from the staff, it was a recommendation from the consultants that indicated this was the best system, this would give you the best for your dollar amount. That's where I was going. I've said many times, yeah, I'm going to take my responsibility in the fact that I helped kick this can down the road for a number of years. We've had 15 or 18 years in order to do this. And yes, we had 18 years to do something with the radio system. I was one of the board members that said, hey, we can wait another year, we can wait another year. And I kicked this can down the road. My point was, we kicked it as far as we can kick it, and now it's time to act. Providing reliable service to people that put their lives on the line for us each and every day. That's all. Thank you.
Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just, again, in the beginning, like to say thank you to all of the citizens who took time to come out, not just tonight, but the other nights when we have been discussing this issue. And I'd like to thank the board members, because as I said to the paper, I believe every board member wants what's best for Caroline County. We don't always agree on the direction we may go, but I think every person up here feels an allegiance to doing what they feel is to be the best thing. And so for that, I thank them. We know that this is a mandate. It's just not something we chose to do. But like in many situations, we are mandated to do things, and funds don't follow those mandates. But then the other way of looking at it, when we look at safety, and when we look at human lives that are going to be protected and saved as a result of this, it's a good mandate, even though it didn't come with funding, because we can't put a price on human life. And we send our law enforcement people out in the community to protect us, and we want to give them everything that we can to make sure that they're able to do that. And so when we looked at this issue, we looked at all the possibilities, and as far as I'm concerned, and I have no allegiance to Motorola or anybody else. My allegiance is to the citizens of Caroline County and being able to give them the best service that we can afford to give them. In this case, I just happen to believe that I think it's Motorola. We had a consultant who basically we feel did an excellent job. And that consultant pretty much said to us that this is the direction that we should go. We had staff. We had a committee. And so every person or every group that we had involved in this basically has given us what they feel is the best direction. Personally, you know, I don't know a lot about radios. That's not my strong suit. But I have talked to people throughout my district who do know about them. And I've talked to the sheriff, and I've talked to other persons as well. And I just feel that we are at a point where we need to make a decision. And I think that this is the best decision given the circumstances that we are faced with. And so for that reason, I would ask that the board would support me in making that decision for Motorola tonight. Not because it's something I want, but because it's something that I think is needed in this community. I think it's going to serve to protect the people who are out there in the field working as law enforcement officers, and as well as the fire and rescue people. So in the end, we are making a decision that's going to provide a service to the citizens of Caroline County, because that's what we did. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I had a long, drawn-out statement, but I'm just going to summarize. I think we've all, I've kind of given you the process. Just a couple of things you may want to know that when we started negotiating with Motorola, when they gave us the contract in March, the pricing expired in April. They've since extended the pricing from March to April, and then finally to June. And when we got the contract, each board member has the ability to accept the contract proposed or the staff recommendation, or actually look at it a lot further. I don't know specifically about radios. I really don't care specifically how it works. I care that when you push the button, somebody answers. And I think that's the reality that you folks care about. You could care less about whose name was on the radio, but if you push the button for help, somebody better be there to answer. That's what I really cared about. So I looked at the contract for things that my, I guess, 30 years in software have told me to look for. One of the things we got was, through the help of Motorola, they said we would give you a maintenance reinstatement fee. In other words, if the county had to cut their budget and said, well, we're not going to pay maintenance on this system in year whatever, they won't penalize us when we pick maintenance up again. That was basically a $290,000 saving that hopefully we won't have to use, but it's there in case we need it. Motorola also gave us assistance in providing initial broadband capabilities. They're going to put a small wireless site on each of the antennas. It's small, but it's a start. And I told you before when we first mentioned this, my goal was to have a wireless county, all with the internet. And if the radio system was a way to do it, that's what I was going to try to do. They also gave us various discounts for different equipment that we can purchase almost new. They even gave us the advantage of something that most vendors don't do, is when their prices decreased, they came to us and said, oh, our prices went down, we'll give you the lower prices instead of staying with the same price. All of that, I think, netted us to about $500,000 in additional discounts, savings, waivers, whatever you want to call it. But needless to say that no additional discounts or waivers were offered since our last public comment session. Whether that was purely a coincidence or something else, neither here nor there. The one thing we did secure and make sure was that the prices quoted in the contract would continue to go forward. Now, my last thing is, I personally, again, just like when you push the button for the radio, it's like a computer system. When I log on to my computer to get my email, I don't really care where the server is. I don't care where that is. So I looked at a neighboring locality as a real good thought, because I wouldn't have to manage it, I wouldn't have to maintain it. I really wouldn't be at their mercy, because I would build in any upgrade cost into that. And since the radio technology is over air, when I turn my radio on, it automatically updates whatever software is out there. So I didn't think having my own system was a big thing. And actually, having a partner system is a lot better in the short term. In the first 5 years or so, we would save significant amount of money with a partner system. And that 5 years was, there has been a lot of discussion of, is the technology going to change? So my thought process was, I can go out and spend $6 million, I know I got a radio, but what happens if the technology changes in 5 or 6 years? Then I got a $6 million boat anchor, because I have to spend money to buy something else again. Theoretically, we haven't been able to confirm that there's a technology change coming. There may or may not be, but we're ready for the technology change that's going to come. I think it's 2017, by purchasing the radios, the P25 brand of radios we have. So we've still got that. And I guess the last thing is, we eliminated narrowbanding our own system. Somebody at our last board meeting came and said, I don't know who it was, it's probably a good thing, but they came and said they called the FCC and they filed a case against the county for lack of complying with the FCC mandate. Was that you? Okay. Well, whoever it was pushed me into the cheapest, quickest narrowbanding thought of not having $10,000 a day penalty. So sometimes the things you do have counter effects to what you want. But we could, for $2 million, go out here now, narrowband, and you couldn't hear across the street. But we would comply with the federal mandate. We wouldn't be fined, the federal government would be happy, you guys wouldn't be happy. So our goal is not necessarily to make you happy, but give you the capability to do your job. So narrowbanding our own system was out. We got numbers from Hanover in December as an option. Their numbers were much higher. We weren't able to partner with them. We got preliminary numbers from Spotsylvania in January. Those numbers weren't good. We got newer numbers from Spotsylvania in the beginning of this month. And we got another set of numbers from Spotsylvania on Friday. We've actually tried to work with everybody, and as others have said, we have exhausted every option there is. I still believe it's better to have somebody else run the system, have somebody else take care of the maintenance, but the cost, and I said all along I would go with the most cost-effective option that was out there and try to do what was best for the county, the taxpayers, and the first responders. So, having said that, I think we've all had an opportunity to make a discussion, say where we are. Is there a motion to move forward? Because we still have the 4 options we've already had. We've always had.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we authorize, go with the Motorola proposal and enter a contract with the Motorola.
You would be authorizing, we have the contract, you would be authorizing staff to sign the latest or execute the latest contract we have.
Please. Yes. That's my motion.
Is there a second to executing the latest contract we have from Motorola?
I second that motion.
I guess we've got enough discussion, but one last chance. Is there any more discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add one thing. From my perspective, when I was elected, this was one of the things that was kind of glaring at us coming down the pipe, that we had this radio system. And talking with some members of the state police, they had tried to get us on possibly partner on a system that they have called STARS. We actually got together with the state police, had a meeting. I think Major Mosier was there, members of the school board. Technologically, it didn't work, but that system, partnering with the state police, was going to be $6 million. This system with Motorola is $6.25 million. So you're in the same price range as the partner. For me personally, I'll be honest with you, I was doing everything in my power. I wasn't on board with Motorola system at all at first. We hired a consultant. The county hired a consultant, and in closed sessions, I can honestly say that I grilled him. What about this? What about this? What about this? And he had an answer for every scenario that I was coming up with. So with that, in my opinion, is with the Motorola. So that's how I will vote. Thank you.
Yes. You want to call the question? All in favor of executing the current Motorola contract before us, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Nope. Thanks, guys. I do appreciate it. We don't allow applause. I want to thank all of you. So we're going to move on, but remember, we can't pay for the radio system yet. We have to take care of the next agenda item, which is borrowing money to pay for it. So we voted to get your radio system. Now the bank has to give us money to pay for it. So thank you, Sheriff. If you need a minute for your folks to leave, we appreciate all you've done. We're gonna take up the next agenda item, which is financing. Thank you all for coming out again. Thanks, Wayne, for convincing the rest of them. Appreciate it. Good work.
That's my job.
All right. Let's move on to agenda item number 6, which basically we have to have before we can buy a radio system. We have to have financing. So we need to authorize staff to seek financing proposals for the radio system. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second to authorize staff to seek financing for the radio? Or do I need to call those people back and tell them we're not going to, we selected a radio, but we can't pay for it, so you need to come back? Anytime. I was waiting for you. I was just giving you time to say yes. Motion made by Mr. Akers, seconded by Mr. Taylor. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries again unanimously. Agenda item number 7 is a report on updated fiscal year 2012-2013 expenditure. Who is that? Ms. Hatcher? Yeah, shortly. Keep it on me.
Mr. Chairman, you had asked that we provide, which we tried to provide you, a breakdown of where we are. Remember, this wouldn't be through the end of May. Some of these are, May bills definitely haven't been paid yet. Some of those are still just coming in. And some things are even further back than that.
I'm sorry, I need to go back, Mr. Black. We have 277 new radios, 242 refurbished radios, 64 going to sheriff, 64 new going to the sheriff. Well, why not just send you this meeting?
132 of the bus.
132 for bus drivers, new. 142, 150 refurbished going to fire and rescue. But I've got the list. If the rest of the board would like it, I think I asked Mr. Cully for it before I started beating on Motorola to get a better price. So, all right, and I didn't get a chance to move. Okay. Mr. Cully, back to the report on expenditures. I'm sorry.
You'll see some of these things are only through April 30th. And right much of the May bills have been paid, but not all of them. So you're not exactly just 1 month out on some of these line items. and we've tried to mark some of those that are only through April 30th for you to see. So we've presented pretty much a breakdown by departmental line